Hello, everyone, and welcome to Haskell's Internship Experience Podcast. Join us today as we highlight our internship program and the unique influences it has on our students. I am your host and University Relations Representative, Allie Hale. Today, I am joined by Sean Joseph, one of our interns who is now converted into a full-time hire. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Allie. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, a big congratulations to you for graduating. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about where you went to school and what degree you graduated with?
I attended the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Graduated on the day of May 13th with a bachelor's in electrical engineering and a minor in mathematics. Full-time and ready to go.
Yeah. How has the transition been for you full-time so far?
For the first week, just kind of getting used to just being able to just think about work. It was a relief, but also something to get adapted to. Not having to worry about homework or tests or studying has been awesome, but also just getting integrated within how each project works, starting to get more in depth on how Haskell does things and, just applying what I learned in school and what I learned during the internship to my full-time role has been a blessing for sure.
Awesome. Well, your Haskell family is very, very proud of you. Tell us a little bit about what team you're working with specifically now.
Well, I work underneath Brian Smith. He's a director of design. I specifically work with the electrical team. We now actually have a PE, Wayne Morrison. I work with Dan Williams, a designer, and Gary Rauchi, a designer as well. But I also have been working with some fire protection. I've been kind of going in and out with electrical and fire protection kind of since I started. Fire protection kind of piqued my interest, so I've been on a few of those projects.
Specifically, what role have you been serving on during your internship for those projects, and has it differed at all during the transition into a full-time role?
When I first started the internship, it was over the summer, I was getting just to learn everything, meeting everybody, kind of getting out of that nervousness stage, getting slowly integrated on the project. The first project that I worked on with Haskell was the Orlando Health Neuroscience Institute. My role for that job was to lay out lights, power, risers, electrical panels, that kind of thing. But as I started to learn Revit more and started working with my team a little better, I got integrated on more projects and kind of that go-get-it attitude. I was able to build relationships with my teammates and say, hey, I can do this. So as I continued to work throughout the fall and the spring, while I was in school, I was able to just experience more projects, and also with dealing with fire protection, I was able to experience stuff other than medical buildings that usually I'm sure I'm going to work on. So I've worked on Pepsi factories, some temples that we've been looking at, some of the Frito-Lay stuff, plenty of medical office buildings. And my role with those has been generally the same, some a little different. Like sometimes we look at different ways to save the company money, or we'll look at how to just come through with the design, looking at room occupancies for fire protection. That has been something that's very, very interesting. So that's kind of what I've been doing, is just learning a whole lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been getting a lot of wide exposure, both from your internship, and it sounds like you'll kind of continue to do the same. Do you have a particular maybe favorite story from any of those projects that you've worked on?
The first thing that comes to mind was trying to figure out why a specific building was using so much energy. They gave us, it was just I guess you can call it an audit, just to see what was going on within the building. We got a few drawings, a few load calculations, panel calculations, and they were trying to figure out whether it was an electrical issue or mechanical. But I think that was the first time it was like, hey, here's a problem and figure it out, versus them kind of walking me through the steps. It was just kind of like, hey, we don't know what's going on, maybe you guys can figure it out. And that was something that kind of piqued my interest, because it was like, well, this is kind of what we did in school was, hey, here's a problem on a test, or here's a problem in the lab, we just need you to solve it. So that's something that definitely I learned in school, just that problem solving mentality that ended up coming into fruition at work. It was definitely a learning experience. It turned out to be an HVAC problem, but we ended up solving it. So that was definitely something. I think just the variety of projects is what I love about Haskell, is that you don't have to be stuck to a specific project, but you can branch off and do anything.
Tell me a little bit about how the in-person summit was for you, and maybe some of those days that you had for that experience last year.
That was the first time I ever had an internship like that. Most of my internships have been, hey, welcome to the company and start working. There was no introduction, there was no the coworkers, it was just welcome, and then you just get right to it. So there wasn't really a social aspect to it. And I think listening to some of my classmates in school, it was like, wow, my internship was the best. So it but just listening to people, go to different companies and their internships, it was just like, wow, I enjoyed it. So I think the biggest part was just the socializing. I think it got a lot of people out of their comfort zone, which definitely me. Usually meet new people, you're not going to open up, but I think the way Haskell structured it was like, hey, there's a benefit if you meet everybody. And I think by the end of that internship, you have people's numbers, the social media accounts that you're sharing across. There's some interns I still talk to today on Instagram to see how they're doing. So it was definitely an awesome experience.
Haskell has built its foundation on some of our core values of team excellence, service, and trust. Tell us a little bit about how maybe you saw those aspects during your internship.
Even before I was introduced to the core values, like just being in the interview process, as soon as I walked into the door of the Charlotte office, like everyone was welcoming, friendly, introducing. And then I think the first thing I got was a box from the Haskell Internship Experience, just like a welcome package. And that was something I had never seen before at my other previous internship. So that was already like, okay, I think this is going to be different. So just seeing that, aspect of service was awesome. So, and I think the trust thing came in, because trust goes both ways. When I started working harder, everyone recognized that and they gave me praise, which allowed me to even have this full-time opportunity, which was awesome. So I think, service and trust are two of the biggest ones that I felt as soon as I walked through.
What advice would you give to another college student who is maybe considering an internship opportunity with Haskell?
I would say be open to anything. Don't think that you are stuck to your discipline if you are an engineer or architect or construction. There's no one right way to do it. If you go in and you see that, something else piques your interest, I would say pursue that. There's nothing saying that you can't explore those other options. I know a lot of the other interns that I talked to at Haskell said that they might switch to something else because they saw that it was something that they liked even more. So I would say just be open.
So Sean, do you feel as though your internship really prepared you for transitioning into your full-time role?
100%. I think the biggest thing was going from the beginning projects of just learning how the software works and kind of what we do to now where I have, like, hey, here's the project you're on. I think the difference between if I was to come in as a full-time brand new, it's completely different because you save the learning phase time and you're actually able to immediately help your team on another project. So just like next week, I'll be put on a new project from scratch, which I've never done before, but I'm a lot more prepared now than I would be if I was just coming in without the internship. So I think not only the aspect of as far as what I do, but the aspect of learning who I work with, how they work, and then all the different trainings and meeting with people, just being able to speak publicly in front of everyone is something that you get a big helping of during the internship, especially for our mini big pitch that we had. I think that definitely helped out with public speaking a lot because you think that you're okay at it until you have to do something like that. So I think that was a huge help, just being able to stand in front of everybody with confidence, present who you are and what you do. So I think the answer is yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing this pay off right here in real time with this conversation right now. Well, Sean, thank you so much for your time. Do you maybe have any words of wisdom that you want to leave the audience with?
Something I live by is, balance is everything. So not too much, not too little. Just keep a cool and even head and everything will work out.
Well, folks, that concludes today's podcast with Sean Joseph. I want to take a minute to just thank everybody for tuning in for the Haskell Internship Experience Podcast. For any questions regarding our program, please reach out to either myself, Allie Hale, Deidre Braley, or Mike Husky. Until next time.